5. Secondly, we do not tolerate any form of what is it called? We do not tolerate any oppression within the comment. Let's just be respectful. Let's just try to have conversations that build us, that dignify everyone that is in this space. And as we move on, I'd just like to talk about what we are going to be discussing today. And we hope to highlight and extensively understand the impact of intersectional feminist leadership on various social impact areas in the African scene beyond gender and into areas like economic empowerment, climate action, current politics, healthcare, tech, and to generate a discussion rooted in an understanding of feminism from an Afrocentric perspective, which will help us to, one, understand the nuances and perspectives of 4 African women who will be our panelists today, representing West, East, and South Africa, and how their understanding of intersectional feminism informs and has changed the meaning of work in the social impact space. 2, to explore hands-on strategies that these women have used to address social matters from an intersectional feminist perspective. And 3, to inspire action amongst the participants and everybody who's here to dismantle different forms of oppression, strive for systemic balance, and achieve social justice. For now, allow me to introduce our first panelist. Her name is Njeri Wamigwi, and she is the founder of Usikimie, a Kenyan organization that works towards ending the prevalence of sexual and gender-based violence in Kenya. Njeri, you're welcome. Could you please tell us a little bit more about yourself, your work, and what intersectional feminism means to you? Karibu.
Hi, everybody. My name is Njeri Wamigwi. I'm an intersectional feminist, as I have said, because I'm a firm believer that our intersections are important in doing feminism work, and especially as an African woman, as a Kenyan woman, to be specific. All feminisms are not the same. We know the first wave, second wave, third wave, but now we're looking at how do we look at, especially for somebody like me who works in a low income community, really, how does then my intersectional feminism have to work? Because I am looking at our stories, because all stories and all inequalities and all oppressions are not equal. When you're looking at a woman who is in Soweto, who is disadvantaged, she has no education, who her life started by not just having pads. We need to look at all these intersections and how they intersect with our feminism and how we react or act out towards it. For me, I feel like a lot of injustices and a lot of oppressions are rooted by poverty. And most of the time we don't look at it like that, because they're like, feminist theory and these things around that. However, we also have to look at how do we root out inequalities that make sure that in order for us to be able to have women, Black women, Kenyan women, especially women of a certain socioeconomic place where the oppression is rooted by where they were born in. I remember there was a time we took 60 women out of Soweto and to just to have dinner with them. And for these women, for a woman who is the age of 60 to cry and tell you she has never left Soweto, and Soweto is in Nairobi, it tells you a lot about the misconceptions that we have. And I was asking myself, that is, I think, the first day I asked myself, as a feminist, do I see these women as deserving of, how do I teach feminism to women who have never even heard of feminism? How do I tell them that their lives matter and that there is a way that your life is of value? So for me, intersectional feminism is it for me, because I look at poverty, how it oppresses women, how it makes them captive to the kind of lives that they live, and how do I make those lives better? Because I can't just come and tell you, these are the feminist principles. I need to teach you, educate you, put you in a place where you feel like this is a level playing field, and then tell you, as a woman, you can actually garner equity. And they're like, oh, we can? You mean I am allowed to do this? Are you telling me? Sometimes you teach women some things here, and again, when people ask me, that is the why. You teach women and they're like, oh my, are you serious? I am allowed to, I'm allowed to dream. I'm allowed to have a vision. And I feel like for me, that is what feminism looks like for someone like me. Yeah.
Oh,
Other than
Jerry,
that, I work.
no,
Yeah.
please proceed. You
And
are
I was
saying
going
other
to say,
than
other than that, I work around gender-based violence. So I also see the intersection of how gender and violence intersect, and how, again, poverty deprives women of chances of even getting justice, chances of even understanding that I, as a poor woman, I have as much a chance of getting justice as any other person. So yeah, that's generally what I want to say about myself for now.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Njeri. My goodness. I can tell that class is in session. Everybody, like class is in session. Get ready, gear up. The next 1.5 hours, Lord help us. So let's now cross over to Cameroon and where we have Fatoumata, who is a human rights activist. Fatoumata, we want to hear who you are. And also, what's your story around feminism? Why do you do what you do? What has shaped your perspectives on intersectional feminism? Welcome. We say it Karibu in East Africa.
Thank you so much. First, I'm from Liberia, West Africa. It's okay. My name is Fatoumata Binta Sal, but I actually prefer to be called Binta. That's why I have it here. I run a nonprofit for marginalized women and girls. And we do a lot of work around advocacy in terms of health, inclusion. We do like empowerment programs, which is in a form of an alternative livelihood skills training for marginalized women. And then just like set them up, like start them up with like seed funds to start up a business. But for me personally, I do international advocacy or stuff at the UN or other international partners. For me, when I started Sister for Sisters, it was like a no-brainer. It was something like intersection I've always like talked about, but it wasn't like something that was very common around here. Like you hear people say, oh, what is intersectional feminism? What does that mean? Even the word is so big. It sounds like first heard the word into the different forms.
I think Fatu has dropped. Maybe internet connection is.
Oh
You're
my
back.
Sorry, I'm back.
Welcome.
So yeah, it's just like for me, it's just like recognizing the different intersections that we come with as women. For example, I'm a woman that has a different sexual orientation. I'm also from a Muslim background. I grew up in a very conservative Muslim family. I'm not religious though. Also, I come from a very like a country that's very like it's like predominantly Christian. So like living in a society like this with all these different like intersections of who I am, recognizing that there are like layers to me than just being a female or a woman that lives in Liberia. It was just understanding about my own identities or my own self, my own layers that I came with, for me to be like able to see other people, to understand like, wow, these like people come with different layers. So at Sister for Sisters, we are very like intentional about the work that we do with women and girls. I would say we use like an intersectional approach, which is working. I mean, I'll talk more about this later, but it's like we recognize that our problems as women, like the previous speaker was talking about, like it's not like uniform. We don't have the same problems. We may be in the same boat, but we're like different in that boat. We have like struggles or like discrimination or inequalities, but those struggles come differently, and it's interpreted differently. So yeah, for me, intersectional feminism is like recognizing that we come with different layers as women and intentionally like focusing on that. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Fatoumata. You said you prefer to be called Binta, so I'll refer to you as Binta. Thank you so much, Binta. It's very interesting to hear from you, and we're looking to learn more from you today. It's my pleasure to now invite Zawadi, who is a co-founder of the Queer Republic, to introduce themselves and what they're about, and what their story is, and how it's shaped their perspective on intersectional feminism. Zawadi? Oh, I think Zawadi dropped off. Just check. Just wait a second. Yeah, they did drop off. I think we'll just give her a few minutes to come back and we can catch up as she does. So we have so far laid the groundwork for what intersectional feminism is and sorry, she's back. Hi, Zawadi, can you hear us? Okay, let's give her a few moments. But thank you so much, Jerry, Binta, for telling us what intersectional feminism means for you. And we're just going to have a great discussion about what this is. And from Jerry, we have so far laid the groundwork and heard your story, which has helped us understand your drive and your motives and the things that make you an intersectional feminist. Shifting the focus from theoretical, and personal understanding to action, I would like to understand what specific intersectional feminist principles have been important to incorporate in your day-to-day work, and what does it mean to have intersectionality at the center of what you do? Oh, wow, I think also Jerry dropped. Okay. Zawadi, can you hear me? I think she's not able to speak. Her mic doesn't show.
Okay, let's see.
But maybe before we can go to that, not Fatu, my goodness, Binta, what are some key challenges that you have experienced in translating intersectional feminist principles? I've heard you talk about how intersectionality, or even the word itself, is such a big word, and it's something else to translate it from what it was or the meaning of it to putting it into actual practice in the organization that you run. And so what are some of the key challenges you've experienced in translating these principles into practice? And what helped you navigate the challenges and emerge even better? Okay, Binta also dropped off.
Uh-oh. Okay,
There she is.
I'll come back.
Binta, I don't know whether you were able to get my question or I could just run through it again.
Sorry, my network is acting. No, I did not. Can you repeat it, please?
Yes, please. I was just asking, what are some of the key challenges you've experienced in translating intersectional feminist principles into practice? And what has helped you navigate these challenges and emerge even better in your work?
Okay, first, I would say that my first challenge was actually understanding or like learning about intersectional feminism, or like interpreting it, or like knowing what the meaning is or what the meanings are. And also like just first understanding that myself, and also like trying to get other people on board, like helping them. So when I started, when I first heard about intersectional feminism, I when I saw the definition, or when I saw something about it and I asked, there was a sister who's like a big sister, a feminist sister, who kind of like talked to me. She educated me based on her own understanding of intersectional feminism, because like there are like different interpretations that I've heard out there.
Mhm.
So when she gave me her own definition of what it meant, I kind of like tried to put it in my own context, coming from Liberia, coming from West Africa, coming from a religious background, coming from a background of like someone with different sexual orientation, and all of those things. So like learning that was a challenge, and also like getting to explain it to other people, like getting it to explain it to my other sisters, and like, oh, you say you're a feminist, you work on feminist issues, like like you're pro-feminist, but you're not, your feminism is not intersectional. I remember one time there was like a Facebook thing back and forth between a colleague of mine and then like the feminist group here,
Mhm.
and it was like a trans colleague who had said that she was like not included in certain like discussions or programs because she's trans, and then feminine people who call themselves feminists would not recognize that she, you know, she's a woman too, or she
Mhm.
should be recognized as a female. Um, and then at that time, I didn't understand what context they were coming from. So I kind of like joined the comment section, and I was like back and forth with them, like defending her and things like that. But later I realized that her understanding also, like there was some misunderstanding, but later on we settled it. I updated like my profiles or whatever on like intersectional feminism, like my feminism is intersectional. um so yeah, like in interpreting that for myself, like just aligning that with my own context, and also like helping other people like my sisters or people who call themselves feminists, to accept or to understand and accept the concepts, was like a challenge. And the way that I navigated that was just what I explained, like more education, like doing these if there's like a meeting, or like there's like a session on like feminism 101 or something, I always bring up about like intersectionality, and they're like, oh my God, you always talk about intersectionality, what is that, what is that? Like you're always talking about intersectionality, that's like your biggest word, like most used word. And I'm like, Yeah, I need to talk about intersectionality because, like, I'm an activist. Yeah, there are activists like everywhere. They're like women human rights defenders everywhere, but like there are different women human rights defenders that comes from different backgrounds. They're like women human rights defender that work in like rural communities. Their own challenges, and me that lives in like urban, like in the city, my challenge is different. But I have to recognize that her challenges or the discrimination or whatever thing that she goes through like on a daily basis is not as similar to what I go through. um and it's about like just really understanding that we're different. Like you have to recognize those differences for you to truly understand that, okay, my feminism is not just, you know, it's not just like fighting for equality or whatever, but also like I should be able to fight for women who are like who live with disability and they're queer women and they're living with HIV. Like, can one person have enough things that are like they get discriminated against because of those identities or those intersectionalities that they come with? So yeah, it's been a journey for me, really. It has been like a real struggle, both in raising awareness, and also like just speaking with other friends who say they're feminists, and then just like back and forth with that. Um, yeah, that has been my struggle. And yeah, and navigating that is just like speaking up more about it and educating myself too more.
Mm. Thank you so much, Binta. I like that you echoed something that Njeri had mentioned at the start, which is all our feminisms are not the same. And because there are so many intersecting issues, then our approach has to be different. And the places we exist in determine also how we look at the problems, what we are solving, how far our resources can even go. And I don't know whether, Njeri, you can hear me now. I think you dropped off at your back.
Sorry. My network in the office just died and we lost lights.
No problem. It's okay.
Our imperfections.
I know, right?
Yeah.
So before you dropped off, I was just saying that we have so far laid the groundwork and heard your story, which has helped us understand your drive, your motives, and the things that make you an intersectional feminist. And now shifting the focus from theory, which you spoke about in passing, and a personal understanding to action, I would like to understand what specific intersectional principles have been important to incorporate in your day-to-day work? And what does it mean to even have intersectionality at the center of what you do at Usikimi and beyond?
One of the things I have to say is, you see, for us, and what most people think is we only work with women. But we work with women, but we also work with queer people. And we are not even allowed to even say that, because the minute you even mention something like that, then people are like, why are you working with queer people? That is how intersectionality looks like. Intersectionality means like I have to meet people where they are. And again, intersectionality means, and for how our work relates, is I work with people living with HIV. And you sometimes look at their struggles and their oppression, and you have to also understand and feel for them, and also understand how does that then intersect with even the work you do. Because again, when people are living with HIV, they get like where we are, there are no medicine. We are brown bagging. If you know what brown bagging is, it means you cannot get a full dose of medicine. That becomes of concern to me, because these women living with HIV also face discrimination within the community, and they also get to face gender-based violence. Now add on to that, you're queer. All these identities on one person. all these oppressions on one person. And that's what I'll always say, and I'll always insist. Being intersectional means you have to understand and to acknowledge the danger of a single story, of seeing one person and saying, this is what one size fits all. And for me, that is how my intersection works. I listen to you. I understand your struggle. And then I see how then are we able to move this forward? How are we able to challenge narrative around your story and around your struggle? How does poverty intersect with gender-based violence? Because poverty by itself is a problem. It's one of the problems, I mean, and considering that it is man-made and everything else, it is one of the biggest problems that we have and we face as a society. And not acknowledging it and assuming that this is not a problem. You can't come and teach a poor woman anything else, because that is has become her identity. How do you fish her out from that identity and tell her, look, this is how I strengthen you. This is how we empower you. This is how we show you and we give you hope. Because this has become what I know. What I know is that my husband picked me up. I accept that is what. How do you then change her perception and tell her, look, that is not who you are. That is not your identity. You are much more than that. So that is how we look at issues, especially at work, because for us, majority, let's say 70% of our recipients, 70% of our clients are women coming from poverty, women coming from low income women who do not have jobs, jobby women, you know, and I believe the biggest part that feminism is to act and to say that we are fighting for women equality, not even equality. For me, I believe in equity. For women to have, it's not just for women, other women to have a seat on the table. While other women have a seat on the table, that is not equity, that is equality. But for these women who do not have hope, who do not see themselves in those women, how do you make them see themselves? What part do we have to act as feminists to say, I want to put women on the table? How do we level up for them in a way that makes sense, without big words, without by action? You know, every time people arguing with me on Twitter, and they're like, you feminists, you don't even care for poor women. 1 minute. You don't care for poor women. So when people say that, I'm like, what do you mean? The policies we are setting are actually going to help them. But then again, unfortunately, these policies don't, they don't sip down. They don't come to these women. So they don't understand their roles and their rights. So it is up to us as part of our duties to ensure that their roles and their rights are understood at this level, at the level where we are. All right. So part of the work we do is not just empowering the women, but strengthening their capacity, helping them to understand, and even now starting to inculcate feminist principles slowly, in a way that is understandable and in a language that they understand at this level.
Thank you so much, Njeri. I like that you've talked about so many things, and what your understanding actually means when it comes to intersectional feminism and what it means at your work, because there are so many things you even get overwhelmed just trying to solve them because of the complexities that can exist in just one person. Maxi?
Sorry, light issues happened in the last 1
No.
minute when
No
Jerry was
problem.
presenting a very, very strong submission. I'm learning a lot from this conversation, and I don't know now if Zawadi, you're able to hear us. If you are, hopefully, maybe unmute, say hi, and hopefully as you do that, I'm interested in a conversation that Binti, you mentioned, and how I'd like to phrase it. What I heard from you is that you've had to do a lot of learning and unlearning and evolving, even in terms of, and Jerry also mentioned this at the beginning, first wave, second wave, third wave of intersectional feminists. I wonder, and I do not know if you feel you can speak about it, so let us know. I wonder how different it is if we have like a white feminist kind of thinking. How do we as Africans have to look at the different layers, and how do we have to evolve to appreciate the the nature and the evolving nature of understanding feminism, especially from a Pan-African lens, where we also need to or have to work with people probably from the global north. Binti or Njeri, either of you, feel free to indulge me on that. I'm asking this from a place of curiosity.
I feel like the first wave of feminism that happened, was not for us. It was very much white women. And that's why we say it's white feminists. It was white women led. It was meant for their freedom. It was never meant for the rest of us. The rest of us, we just acquired that freedom as we were chattels to it, really. We were not allowed. And if you really read back and you look at Black women, even in other places, have always had to work. And so for most white women, this was their cause. They wanted to have equality. They wanted to vote. They wanted to do this. So they never included other intersections. They never included women of color. They never included African women. And even when feminism came to Africa, it came in as a much more whitewashed than it was, forgetting that most of us come from matriarchal, matrilineal society. We already had our own way of which we could see and we believe that women could lead, right? And I think in a way that looks like that didn't work for us. That didn't work for us because it did not acknowledge any of our oppressions. It did not acknowledge who we are and what we do and how we show up, because our lives are different. Our lives are different. How we intersect with race, how we intersect, like, yes, our sisters in the struggle in the diaspora, their struggles and our struggles are not the same. We are struggling against a patriarchal society. They are struggling against race relations also. We are struggling against oppressions that they've never had to face. So that is why all those waves, you have to keep on learning and keep on understanding what works for you. As a feminist, as an African feminist, what works for you? And you're able to take that and now change it and own it. Because, again, we are not only struggling, for me, I will say, you will find that we are struggling against police brutality, but the way we're struggling against police brutality is different from, say, an American, Black feminist. They're struggling for their lives. We're struggling. The way oppression for us comes is, for me, is I can't even report to the police. So I have to think as a feminist, what is the way that I make it safer for women to report? You understand? So for most African women, we have to look at feminism for a very different lens. What works for us? And make it ours. It becomes Afrocentric, because that is what we are struggling for. Again, being very cognizant of the struggles of the other feminists that were ahead of us, Kina Wangari Maathai, Akina Njoki Ndong'o. What were they struggling against? Because they identified as feminists. And what are we now struggling against? And what are we building on? What building blocks are we placing for us to keep on building and for us to keep a safer and a more equitable world for women?
I wonder, connect. Oh, all right.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Can I say something before I lose my thought? And Jerry, that was really brilliant. It got me thinking about just my recent experience in New York at the CSW. There was like I won't name the event, but there was like a safe space thing that feminists were supposed to have, like a setting where people could talk about their struggles and like a healing session. And then after that session, someone wrote in a group and said that this session that was just conducted was very harmful. It was a white woman that wrote that. She said it was very harmful. So my colleagues started asking, like, what part of it was harmful? And she was like, the stories were so triggering, so brutal, was so this and that. I'm like, I don't understand. Like, what exactly was the space for again? It was there for people to share about the traumas that they have or they've through, and you sign up to go to that space knowing that that would be discussed there. You already said this is a space for us to be ourselves, for us to like know that we have sisters, talk about our struggles. And then you're saying that you feel so disturbed, you feel so like harmed, you feel like all those disgusting things that she said, like it was crazy. And then it was like the point where, oh, we don't have the same struggles. Of course we don't have the same struggles. I come from Africa, I come from West Africa, you're from I don't know where, you're a white woman, you obviously don't understand like these are the things that we go through on a daily basis. And not understanding that, like we are literally in the same space, we're in the same network, we call ourselves feminists. And to say that about another colleague who comes from another background, like an African background, talking about her struggles, and you are there, instead of being empathetic or whatever, you're saying that you felt like harmed and things like that. So yes, I agree with you, Jerry. Like what women's struggles are way, like their feminism is way different from our feminism. And our feminism is basically like intersectional. So like she couldn't understand like that's like a reality of what we go through, or like what has been happening in the different spaces that people claim to be their claim to be feminist in, you know. So yeah, I just wanted to share that.
Thank you so much, Binta. Maxi, you're muted. You're trying to speak.
I was just saying thank you to both Binti and Jerry. Again, I'm in school, class is in session, Fel, continue.
Thank you so much, Bin.
I think my connection is more stable now. I'm so sorry for missing most of the session.
No, it's totally fine. Please introduce yourself and what intersectional feminism means to you. Then I can ask you a question.
Okay, thank you so much. My name is Zawadi Masioko. I'm a creative, a multidisciplinary artist, and the co-founder of the Queer Republic. So what I understand about intersectional feminism as an artist, a creative, a Black artist whose art speaks on African art. Also, like art has opened me up to noticing how we have a lot of creativity and wisdom within our customs, but then all of that is not within us. We don't have the benefits for it. We don't use it. Most of the museums in the world, they have Black art, but then Black people cannot have access to that. The people who created this art, they don't see it. And also as an artist, looking at how art is everywhere, but then the artists are starving, you know. And I'm also a woman, I'm a queer woman. And as a queer person and living in Africa, I feel like I'm a walking heartbreak. Queers are walking heartbreaks because there's a lot of hatred that is shoved towards us, and that hatred is mostly justified through religion. So I was born Christian. Well, I was raised Christian, not born Christian. I was raised Christian, and from a young age, I was following the belief until I was 15, say 15, because I had questions. I had a lot of questions. And that's also when I discovered my sexuality. So that intersected the fact that I am raised in this belief that says who I am is not okay. And then I get to be an artist. It all intersects. Whenever I say I am queer, I'm an artist, and that has to be one and not separate. But how the world has been structured and how the system has been structured, you have to say I'm queer first, and then I'm women next, and then I am a creative. So there's a division between all of that, you know, and having to move into those divisions and create a whole, a circle where you get to exist and you get to live fully and fight all of these injustices that are thrown toward us. So my work as a creative, I always advocate for African art, and I always advocate for queerness. And as the co-founder of the Queer Republic, my mission in this world is to make sure that we as queers across Africa, we are sustainable, we are self-sustainable. I envision us not having to stand in front of a parliament and say we deserve to live. We shouldn't need validation to life from a government official or from a god, because we are killed, we are denied life, we are tortured because someone believes that we shouldn't live and it was written somewhere. And they don't recognize that we are also Christian. When that the complicated part comes into play, when someone says, I'm a feminist, but then when it comes to queer, that's the limit. God says that you are not okay. God says that you shouldn't get life. I also praised that God. What do I say to that God? How do I interact with that God? Do I die? Is it the end? Should I end my life? Are we not creation? Are we not life? Do we not deserve to live like anyone else? So with my work, I intersect the creativeness and also that the freedom, fighting for freedom, queering freedom in every aspect of life. So if someone tells me, how is life for a queer person, I would say that on financial aspects, my queerness has to count. If I'm a creative, for example, I'm a creative, I'm self-employed, and also I run a business. Now in the South African context, you get opportunities where women are seen. They're creating more space for women to get in, and also for creatives. But then the narrative that you're speaking about in terms of art and creativity, if you're blatantly fighting for freedom, you won't get spaces, especially the elite spaces like your galleries. You won't get a lot of platform because they would want to silence you, And on top of that, my art advocates for all of my being, I don't discriminate against myself. And also just having to relearn what I have learned from a young age, the guilt from being queer, and also just the art as well. I think creativity and my art is more of speaking to spirit. And I've gotten to communicate with spirit more after I left religion than when I was religious. So it also teaches me that aspect, that religion is not spirituality. It is a segment of it. It's not spirituality. So, yes.
Thank you so much, Zawadi. I think you just came back when we were talking about how different our feminisms are when you think about the first wave of feminism and how reformist it was, catering to the needs of white women, and how censorship has affected Jerry's organization, Usikimi. You cannot talk about fighting against violence, that discriminates against queer people, and how Binta has talked about what it means to exist in white spaces, or, engage with white feminists who do not understand the intersecting complexities of existing as a trans, a Black woman, or a queer woman like you are. And I think it is quite something that you've said, that a queer woman is a walking heartbreak. It is the reality of queer women, not just in South Africa, also in Kenya and in so many other places. And I'd just like to ask, as a queer activist, what is it that you found helpful when thinking about organizing and building a movement, which is the Queer Republic, that is founded on, Afrocentrism, and just bringing back, or holding that dear, and queer joy, and challenging policies that insist on terming queerness as an African or not spiritual or something that is other.
Thank you for that question. For me, I would say that what helps me is knowing that we are doing this for us more than anything. Whatever we are doing, whatever our policies we will be putting in place, whatever our activities, they should stem from our realities, because we are doing this for us as queers. You know, we know the different contexts that we live in. Yes, I'm in South Africa and I collaborate with queers from Kenya, my co-founders from Kenya. So also within myself, whenever we are organizing activities, we have to do them in Kenya and also in South Africa. So my constant thinking, and also my co-founder reminded me of this the other day, that we are in different contexts. Sometimes in South Africa, it might be easier to organize activities, but then in Kenya, it's more riskier. So some of the things that they are hosting in Kenya won't be similar to South Africans. And that is something that I was thinking of. For me, I thought of, what if I was in Uganda and I didn't have as much freedom as I do in South Africa? What if I was in Kenya? What if I was in Zimbabwe? What would happen? And my mind goes to that I have to think about the possibilities of being kidnapped and being tortured. I have to put myself in situations where I'm constantly monitored, or I wouldn't wear any rainbow colors. I'm a creative. My clothes have painting. I speak activism in my clothes. I have rainbow clothes, rainbow boots, trans jerseys. Like, I advocate for queers in the way I wear and in how I speak. So having to think about what would happen if I'm in a context where I can't have that freedom. So from that point, we look at the people that we're working with. What is their context? Is this safe for them? How can we be safe? Even for me, in my context in South Africa, how can I practice safety, and also practicing that safety for my co-workers and my colleagues in Kenya or in Zimbabwe or in Uganda? How can we practice safety in that instance? You know, so I think that stemming from looking at our realities and our context, and also understanding it's a process, because you can imagine something, but then when you're in it, it's a different context. It's a different context altogether. So in that we are rooted in providing for ourselves, and also doing activities that would accommodate us in our different contexts. That is what we are rooted in.
Amazing. Amazing. Zawadi, nice to have you on this call. And I promise you, I mean, I'm taking so many notes.
Was I audible? I think my connection is acting up again.
You are.
Am I audible?
Yes, you are very, very audible, and I appreciate your. I would love to see you in person, or at least some of your work, because you say, you speak activism in your art, in your clothes, in your boots, in jerseys, in every single way. But we also how conscious each of the three panelists. You've all spoken about something very interesting. You've all spoken about how you work with, others in the movement, others who have at least some level of understanding when it comes to the importance of queering our present, queering our future, but also intersectional feminism as it unfolds, and learning and relearning and applying to the process. I want to throw a curveball, and this curveball is fast to fail. You are in this conversation as a panelist, but also as a co-host. I'd like to talk about work contexts that or the workplace that is not generally, founded upon the principles or understanding of intersectionality and intersectional feminism, where your colleagues and teams that you work with, this is perhaps not the primary orientation in terms of mental orientation to consider these kinds of important conversations. What would you say leaders of organizations, especially organizations in the social impact space, and I invite Njeri and Binti and Binta and Zawadi to also reflect on the same. What for organizations that are not typically they are in social impact, but not necessarily social justice. And you're probably working on livelihoods or some poverty eradication somewhere, or some other health issue. What would the leaders and practitioners, presenting themselves male, female, other, what would we need to do as leaders in this social impact space to ensure that intersectional feminism isn't an afterthought, that it finds, as my friend likes to say, pride and place in the very fabric of how the organization exists. Yeah, I think that I represent quite a number of voices asking that. Yeah.
I think for starters, it's very important that organizations in social impact understand the importance of adopting agile structures that are responsive to upcoming challenges. And I think it's especially important because as we achieve milestones in trying to advocate for women, even when those organizations do not work in social justice, as we know, other organizations that work in the same space do that, advocating for women and historically marginalized individuals, with different, under different kinds of oppression, poverty, and, climate injustice and all these things. Oppression takes an even bigger and more brutal stance because you devise one thing, someone comes up with a policy or a legal framework that just undoes all the work that you've done. Case in point, the rollback on Roe versus Wade. And if we do not move from the traditional approach of organizational structures that are set on having, hierarchies and therefore very deeply instituted power dynamics, we cannot even begin to speak about ensuring that intersectional feminism is a practice, let alone even a thought, And so, first of all, what does the organization look like? Are you operating in traditional hierarchies? What does the leadership look like? Is it representative? And I know we talk about representation, and as we talk about diversity, equity, and inclusion. And representation is not just about having women or queer people or just women from different backgrounds on the forefront. It's also about having women who represent the needs of those in the community and those you're striving for, and actually giving them a chance to do the work, not just to show up or as a performative stance. And I think, secondly, the same way we make policies on literally everything, and I think Kenyans are very notorious on doing this. We make policies for everything, but when it comes to implementation, we are, flopping terribly on it. So the same way that we institute principles that work for every other thing is the same way we should institute principles that advocate for intersectional, feminism. And this doesn't have to start from, an I know it all kind of perspective, because we are all in, on a learning journey. Our feminisms are different, and your definition of feminism increases as you keep learning about it. And so what that means is that when it comes to policies, who do you know in the field that does this kind of thing? How do I not just use them, but also actually appreciate the work that they're doing and then build up on what is already existing? We cannot reinvent the wheel, but we can only complement each other's efforts. And then apart from that, just thinking about what kind of research, what kind of toolkits are we using to think about raising consciousness in our groups or in our workspaces, because you cannot do any principles or do any research or think even about intersectional feminism or even know the meaning of the word if you're not doing research, if you're not raising consciousness about what kind of oppression you're under and how that oppression intersects with other forms of oppression. And so there's all those many things that you can do. And I think as development dynamics, we are on the journey to just decide, first of all, what do our principles look like when it comes to intersectional feminism, and how do they align with the African Charter of Feminist Principles? Then thinking about how do we approach this from a point of we do not know everything, but we would like to work with people who are doing this thing, not to seem as an organization that is doing this, to be woke or to be progressive, but actually to make a difference in the social impact space. Yeah.
Amazing. And yeah, I stand in awe of just how much I do not know. Every time I know something new, including what is already getting done, it just shows me genuinely I am much further in the learning journey than I thought. But I feel also on the other side very privileged to even have that consciousness that my journey of learning is probably lifelong, especially in this end. I can track, and hopefully we can track progressively that yes, I still have so much more to learn, but I didn't know this in January. Today I know this, and therefore I will change something about either my perspectives, policies that, or opportunities that are presented to me that shouldn't even be for me, and letting those go with one heart and connecting like the person who should be. Those are, I guess that's how we all continue to journey, even as we as we interact with the many new dimensions. Yeah, well, to you now to help us begin to land the ship.
Sorry, I think I misunderstood.
Sorry, I was saying to you now to help us begin to land the ship with our guests as we begin to, to bring it all together. Any final question that you may have for either of the guests, or Binti and Zawadi, any reflection you would love to give as sort of a conclusion or addition to something that you've already mentioned before, then I will not be closing this particular session. I will let Fel be closing because my voice should not be as audible as it has been in this meeting. So thank you, Zawadi, for sharing the link.
Thank you, Maxi. I'd like to just throw it back to Jerry, Binta, and Zawadi, just to build up on what does it look like to institute feminist principles in organizations, and how can they ensure that it's not just a thing we say, but a thing we are actually doing. And especially just with the backdrop of knowing that feminism, let alone even intersectional feminism itself has faced a lot of backlash and criticism based on stereotypes and misunderstanding. And how would you advise anybody in an organization facing this constant opposition to explore and integrate and even think about integrating it in their impactful work, in the work that they do on a day-to-day? I think anybody can go, but I'll pick Binta to go first, then Jerry, then Zawadi.
Okay. Damn, what should I? Like, I've seen the work that we've done here with donors about being inclusive with the work that they do, and working with like women who also have like different sexual orientations and gender identities. Like there has been a lot of learning, and I mean what I could share is just like, as I could share as someone who runs an organization, I would say that the constant like reminder to like donors or like partners about being inclusive with their work, it's not just like ticking the boxes, but actually like doing meaningful work, making real impacts. You can't say that you're working with women and girls, or you're working to elevate or like empower women and girls, and you can't talk about women who are lesbians, who are like non-binary or trans, or women living with HIV, and all of that. Like, you have to include them. And if you want, like I said earlier, if you want to really make an impact, or if you really want like to be like to bring a real change, you really need to be in like inclusive in terms of like being intentional. And sometimes these people, these donors or these partners, they don't really know how to be inclusive. They probably don't know the ways to go about it. They think that they're doing, the right things, but it's also like on us to call them out or point them in the right directions and tell them like, oh, look, I think you can do better in this area. I think you can be more inclusive in this area. And I'll say this here, like I've said other places, for me, UN Women isn't inclusive at all. I'm sorry about naming them. But like, you can't say you're working for women and you're not working with queer women. You're not working with trans women. You're not like inclusive, because the country that you're based in is like you don't have like you're trying to protect yourself in a way. I understand, I agree, but there are like safer ways to do that, and there are like mechanisms that can be put in place to actually work with queer persons or like persons with different orientation and gender identities. Like they're like, there's a reason why I can't fully explain about what I do because of safety reasons. So like there are different mechanisms that can be put into place to actually make this change. Like nothing will happen if you work or if you included queer persons like in your programs, or if you said like, oh, I'm doing like an SRHR training and I want women and girls. Are you intentional about which women and girls that you're inviting? Are you also like thinking about like there are different health statuses, there are different like economic status or like disability or things like that? The programs that you're creating, are they like you're having these trainings, are there like places that are like safe for queer persons to be at? Is it like accessible for someone with disability to be at? Are the trainers that you're hiring, the consultants or the facilitators, are they aware of SOGI's issues? Like there's so many things that are like so important when it comes to like being inclusive or like being intentional about inclusion. So yeah, and sometimes I feel like they are not really trying hard to learn. They're not opening up themselves to like learning more about what it is, and like leaving that perception of, oh, people with different sexual orientation, gender identity are like this, and like plays like a sexual, like sexualize them instead of like looking at their struggles and their challenges. Yeah, so I would say like, if you want to make like real impact, if you want to bring like real change, just go out, like learn more, unlearn, learn, relearn, whatever, and be intentional.
Thank you, Binta. I like that you've touched a little bit about funding and what it looks like for it to be unrestricted, because there's unrestricted and then there's decolonized funding. What does it look like for you to actually include women and girls in your initiatives and in your organizations and even big corps like you've mentioned? So I really appreciate you for putting that out in the light, as we should, and as everybody should also have the courage to call out organizations that don't do that, but also capitalize from the the gains that they get from working with women and girls. Njeri?
I hope, can you hear me?
Yes, clearly.
Yeah, I'm on the road. So
It's
anyway,
okay.
for me, this is what I have to say. First of all, Binta, man, hats off. The courage to do what you just did, wow, is amazing. For me, I'll have to say, one of the things we have to understand is that as feminists, we are still fighting, and the fight is so not won. We are nowhere near gaining. Actually, I feel like we are losing more than we are gaining. But we have to be steady steadfast on the fight. We have to keep on pushing, even in places where the push doesn't make any sense to keep on pushing. One of the things I see a lot, because I'm on social media sometimes, is the amount of abuse you get if you identify as a feminist. There are times you feel like, I do not even want to be a feminist because that is it. The minute feminist in bio, it becomes now a point where it becomes an insult. And I proudly wear my feminist because I know who I am, I know what I'm fighting for, and I know what I'm advocating for, and I'm still going to stand on business. I'm still going to say, I believe in the cause, I believe in what we are doing, and in as much as sometimes you feel like giving up because the support, feminist funding is so cool, and so many people want it. It's so little, so many people are looking for it. Decolonized funding, as they call it, is so not there. Issues of women, issues that affect women. We can't just be people that implement policies blindly without actually having a look back and thinking, are these policies really working for us? Are these policies really viable for the constituents that we want to represent? As a feminist, who am I representing? Is it just about me? Am I just looking at my own interests, or am I also still understanding that there is a fight for women? I feel like sometimes once we become comfortable in our identity, and we start forgetting that we are forging ways for younger feminists, we are forging ways for the younger generation to understand what gains can we as the fourth wave of feminists say that we have. Us as Afro-feminists, what can we as feminists, if we were to ask ourselves, what are the gains we have gained as Afro-feminists? What gains do we have? How do we then get to put these gains into the younger feminists that are coming up? How do we get to make girls understand? Okay, I can imagine when I was trying to take girls to school, how important that was. Now girls are in school. How do we then tell them what complexities are we fighting, and how does the fight look like for us? How do we get women? Because as much as we have gains, as I said, we're also having losses, because now we also have, I feel like we're fighting men who are becoming more conservative. And then there is a fight for women who feel like feminism made them not become, is it traditional wives? I don't understand. I've been trying to understand what this is all about, and I'm like, girl, this is not it. So I feel like, how do we, in this world where everything attached to feminism is negative, how do we make people understand and what you're fighting for? And how do we keep on standing on business in a world that under-resources us, in a world that doesn't see us? They don't see the Black women, they don't see the queer women. In fact, being a Black queer woman, now being a Black African queer woman, all these identities that we wear, how do we keep on keeping on in a world that is shrinking? The space to even agitate is shrinking for us. How do we keep on standing on business, and how do we encourage each other after we've had such a beautiful session with such amazing feminists? How do we then take this forward? How does this look like for all of us? I mean, it's a rhetorical question. but it's something I want us to ponder and think about. You brought us together and we had such a beautiful, I feel like it's a fellowship, a breaking of bread. And then what? Dynamics, development dynamics, alafu. Then what? This was amazing. Such a beautiful conversation. And then what?
I feel you so much. I feel you so much. I actually wish we can continue but yeah, to all of you, genuinely and sincerely, I'm a student of yours. Maybe as you ask about what, and Fel will mention, like all of this, then what? Under the leadership of Fel, we are trying to do like a state of intersectional feminist leadership in the social impact, a sort of white paper, and it's been progressing, and we've been doing internal reviews, but we would love you to sort of contribute this towards this particular document as a document that is open source, that enables all of us to reflect beyond this hour and a half that we can get in this kind of space. So this is not an end by itself in any way. It is, I'm loving that we connected from, from Liberia to Kenya to South Africa, and a couple of other people who are also attendees on it. And I do feel with Fel's leadership that we will continue understanding this fourth wave and what it is about, and trying to position, trying to position the important, trying to prioritize the important actions. There can be a whole list of recommendations, but yes, we have to be living with, something. And that something for us is, let's have a document that others can unfold. Let's, work together as a community and unpack a lot more of this. Again, I catch myself often when I'm talking because I'm like, I shouldn't be saying any of this. Again, as I promised, I won't be the one finishing. So Fel, over to you.
Thanks, Maxi. Jerry, thank you for throwing that challenge to us, because you can do all this talking, organize as much as you want, but really, what next? So I will leave that as a rhetorical question to everybody, just to keep thinking about, because there's so much work that we're already doing. There's so much exhaustion as well, but how do we then recollect ourselves and say, fine, we've done this, we've talked about all of this, so how do we move forward? I think I hadn't given Zawadi a chance to close off. So Zawadi, please, your parting shot and your closing remarks. I think Zawadi might be experiencing some network challenges from her end. Okay, there she is.
So sorry.
Please
Sorry.
speak, yes.
Yes, thank you so much, Jerry, for that question. Like immediately when you asked that, what next? And also hearing how we are trying to get into spaces, also speaking as a queer person, we try so much to be included in so many things. And even in media, from media to how government people see us, we are constantly fighting to get space. And a part of me is like, no, they can keep their spaces. We can create our own spaces. How about we create spaces where collectively we are combined, and also we know which spaces we want and how we want them. And in those spaces, we will include every single person who we want to work for or who we are working with. When we're drafting policies, we don't just speak about trans people and lesbians, we include them in that. They get to be part of the writing. And also having reflections on, have we done what we wanted? We can write something so beautiful in paper, but then after that, it's like we done the work and that's it. It's just kept in paper. What happens after that? You know, can we reflect on that? Can we reflect on the work that we wanted to do, and not just do something and leave it? Can we reflect on that? Constantly reflecting on the work we've been doing. Is it affecting the people? Is it impacting how we imagined it to be impacting the people that we want to impact? Also hearing from those people. When we had done activities, after that, we are reflecting on them. Like, how was the activity? How did you find it? How can we change? What better measures can we take? You know? But more than anything, I feel like if we get to unite, feminists, like any field that you're in, we can unite and we can create a world that is so beautiful and in the terms that we write in. You know, we are the ones to write that, because even the system that we're fighting, they sat down and they wrote everything. They scrambled for Africa. They were all in that table. So we don't have to try to be on that table, because we are the feast on that table. You know, when we try to get in that table, we are just saying there's some parts of us that will be required to be dined on. So we don't need that table. We don't need that building, because we have to create our own from the ground in ways that will accommodate us, in ways that will nurture us, because we spend so much time fighting to be seen, to be heard, to be human. And I don't know, if we can all collectively say, we are human, we are living, and this is how we can live. This is how we will live. This is how we put in the work. Because also for me, a personal quote that I take is like, I can't expect a straight man to tell me how being a lesbian should be. I can't expect, yes, I can't expect a straight man to tell me how to be a lesbian or how a lesbian life will unfold. I'm the one to create that. So even with the government, with the parliament, the president, I can't expect him to give me a perfect queer life. I will create that. So when we get to that point where we are the ones to create the life we need, and we need to unite. And of course, that would include the intersectional feminism, looking at the backgrounds that we have, the common behaviors that we have towards each other. How can we move beyond that and create something that unifies us, something that will sustain us, that will grow us communally? How do we do that? Yes.
Thank you so much, Zawadi. You reminded me something about when you talk about intersectionality and even feminism at its core, there's always the inference or thinking that we want to, do our feminist things while existing in the oppressive structures. But the point really is to abolish all, do away with all these structures and see how can we exist in a world that does not dismiss us, that recognizes us as human beings, in all our diversity. So thank you for speaking to that and even reminding us what it means to totally do away with structures and build our own, that accommodate us, that accommodate our joy, our pain, and our progress, and the things that advance us as feminists and as people who really look towards being free. So thank you very much, Zawadi, Njeri, and Binta. Thank you so much for sharing yourselves, for sparing your time. I know Njeri is on the road. Zawadi had connection problems, and it really is something to have all of you here and to listen to what you have to say within this, organizations that you work in and the things that you do, the things that you even believe, and being vulnerable enough and trusting us to create a safe space that you can come and speak about who you are and what you do and what you stand against very boldly. So thank you so much. And thank you everyone for who attended this session. We really appreciate making you are the ones who make last Thursdays happen, and this specific one was possible because you again put aside. Sorry, is Jerry saying something? Oh no. Okay. But thank you so much again for attending. And as we continue to explore more trends and challenges and opportunities for social impact, we have a very special theme for last Thursday's session, as it will also be Didi's 5th year anniversary. And our DD at 5 April edition topic will be your triple play to social impact. So every month we have different topics. And this coming month will be your triple play approach to social impact, insights, innovation, and investments. And we would really love to hear from you on the topics you wish to be covered through our future last Thursday sessions. And we will obviously share a form that you can, send in your quick feedback and your thoughts on what we could be talking about. But really, thank you so much, Binta, Zawadi, and Jerry, and everybody else who attended from here at DD. Thank you for sharing today, and we wish you a great Easter week if you celebrate Easter. A great one, and if you enjoy the holiday without the entire thing, please have a great one, and until next time, bye.
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 Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Out.
Hope we can connect sometime. In Jerry and Sawadi.
I will
Would be
definitely.
nice.
I hope
Yes,
that's
We'll share
most
their contacts.
definitely.
If it's okay, yeah. You guys can share contacts.
Sure.
Yes,
Can you
please.
share for me?
Yes, I will share for you, Jerry. It's okay. I'll share the WhatsApp. That's fine. Or I can share the email.
Whatever
Since I have all your numbers, I'll just share whatever I need to share. So it's okay. No problem.
Okay. Thank
All
you.
right. Bye-bye. Thank you.
Hi, Moses. We didn't hear from
you.
Hi, how are you?
You got me out.
No, it's okay.
Bye, guys. Yeah, bye.
Kenyan traffic. Hi, ako Harry.
It's okay. Bye. Bye, Jerry.